If you'll notice in your bulletin, the scriptures are printed out. Ruth chapter 3. If you have a Bible, then just turn in the Bible to Ruth chapter 3. Israel had some very unusual laws. Very strange laws. At least strange to us. And in the subject of redemption, there were three things in Israel that could be redeemed. There were actually more than that, but I'll just mention these three primary things that could be redeemed in Israel. To be redeemed means to be bought back, to be purchased. First, they could redeem a slave. Secondly, a wife could be redeemed. And thirdly, a piece of land could be redeemed. Now, the person who is being redeemed had to have a kinsman redeemer. And this kinsman redeemer who would redeem this individual or this piece of land had to meet three qualifications. First of all, he had to be a relative, that is, a kinsman. Secondly, he had to be willing to redeem. And thirdly, he had to be able to redeem. That is, he had to have the ability and the price to redeem. And so those are three very vital parts of this book of Ruth. The kinsman redeemer. Consider for a moment the redemption of a piece of land. When Joshua marched into the land of Canaan with 2.5 million Jewish people, God divided the land up to tribes, and He allotted certain parts of the land to certain people, so that every Jew had a portion of land. Every one of them got a little piece of land on which he could plant his crops and sustain himself. And if a person were to mortgage his land or lease it out, it could not be sold forever. If a person got hard up and sold his land to another individual, on the year of Jubilee, which was the 50th year, all land reverted back to its original owner, even if he hadn't paid the mortgage. God had a law in Israel that every piece of land would revert back on the year of Jubilee. However, if this fellow has mortgaged his land or sold his land, it might be 40 years before the year of Jubilee, and he needs to get his land back. So he goes and he finds a brother or a cousin, somebody who is a near kinsman to him, and he gets this person to come and pay the mortgage and redeem the piece of land so he can have his land back. Now, this person that he goes out and gets has to be a near kinsman, he has to be willing to do it, and he has to have the money to do it. He has to have the ability. And so a piece of land could be redeemed. And in Leviticus 25 and verse 23 to 25, this is God's law about the redemption of a piece of land. The land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine. Let me stop there just a moment and say something. God is speaking here. He says the land is mine. It's His because He created it. He's the creator of every piece of land in this universe. So it's His land, and He has a right to determine what will be done with it. The land shall not be sold forever. You cannot sell it permanently. You can sell it, but on the year of Jubilee, it comes back to you. So God guarantees that nobody will ever lose his piece of land. Now, today there is a hot issue in Israel. Who owns Israel? The Palestinians have been squatting on that land for thousands of years. For 2,000 years, they've been squatters on that land, which God, who owned that land, gave it to Abraham and to his seed. You can read that in Genesis 12 through 15. The land belonged to God, and God gave Abraham a covenant concerning the land, that the land would belong to the Jews forever. So if you want to know today who has a right to Israel, Palestine, it is not the Arabs, it is not the Palestinians, it is the Jews. When they crucified the Lord, they were scattered all over the world. And they left the land of Israel. And the Palestinians and the Arabs moved in and squatted on that land. Then when the Jews came back in 1948, they were declared a nation. And they wanted their land back. And the Arabs said, no, it's our land. And the Jews said, no, it's given to us by God through Abraham. It belongs to us. Well, the battle broke out and it's still going on today. Now, if you want to know who's right, the land belonged to God. He gave it to Abraham and his seed, and he never rescinded it. So it still stands today. That land of Israel, that little tiny country, belongs to the Jews. He gave it to them. He had the right to give it to them because he owns it. He created it. And that's the truth about the situation in Israel today. That little piece of land about the size of New Jersey, which is only 8 miles wide at one spot, a tiny little country, is in the headlines every day. And the world's focus is not on New York City or Paris, France. The world's focus is on Israel. It has been that way. It will always be that way till the Lord comes back. So now we know about the redemption of the land. Now we want to go to the redemption of a widow. You can never understand this 3rd chapter of the Book of Ruth unless you understand Deuteronomy 25, verses 5 through 10, because it explains what happens here with Ruth. Let's go to Deuteronomy 25 and beginning with verse 5. This is another one of God's very strange laws. But this is what he said. If brethren dwell together, and one of them die, and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her, and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother unto her. Verse 6, and it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel. And if the man like not to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife, now here's what she does. In other words, if this man dies and leaves his wife a widow, and he doesn't have a male child to carry his name on in Israel, his brother is to come and marry her and raise up a male child to carry the name on in Israel and to carry the inheritance on. And that's what this is all about. And then he says, if this kinsman redeemer does not choose to redeem, if he does not choose to marry this widow and raise up a child to her, then she has the right to take him to court. If the man like not to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gate unto the elders and say, my husband's brother refuseth to raise up unto his brother a name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of my husband's brother. He just will not do it. So she takes him before the judges. Then the elders of his city shall call him and speak unto him, and if he stand to it, that is, if he's adamant and won't do it, and say, I like not to take her for my wife, Then shall his brother's wife come unto him in the presence of the elders. Now here's what she does. And loose his shoe from off his foot, and spit in his face, and shall answer and say, So shall it be done unto that man which will not build up his brother's house. And his name shall be called in Israel, the house of him that hath his shoe loosed. In other words, he is to be known as a disgraced person. He is to live in shame and disgrace because he refused to raise up a male child for his dead brother's wife, to carry the name on throughout Israel. Now we come to chapter 3 of the book of Ruth. That will explain what happens here in Ruth chapter 3. Because you remember that Ruth went into Moab, the family went into Moab, and one of these boys married Ruth, and then he died, and left Ruth without a husband, without an inheritance, and as a Moabitess, she was under the curse of God, and she was totally destitute. But she loved her mother-in-law Naomi, so she goes back to Bethlehem with Naomi, and she takes care of Naomi. And to take care of Naomi, she goes out in the field and gleans. In the providence of God, she falls on the field of Boaz, who was a near kinsman to Naomi, and to her by marriage, because he was related to this boy that died, Ruth's husband. Now we begin to read in chapter 3. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? Now Ruth has come back and explained that she landed on the field of Boaz, and Boaz gave her all this grain and was nice to her, and she's relating all this to Naomi. And now is not Boaz of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast? Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. Now they threshed their grain at night, because there was a good breeze at night, and they would put the grain in a blanket and throw it up in the air, and the wind would blow the chaff away. So they did that at night on the threshing floor. And she knew what they would be doing. So she says, Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. Wash thyself, therefore, and anoint thee, put on some good perfume, take a bath, and put on your raiment upon you, and get thee down to the floor. But make not thyself known unto the man, until he has done eating and drinking. And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie, and thou shalt go in and uncover his feet. Now he'll have a blanket over him because it's chilly at night, and you just lift up his blanket off of his feet. He'll be asleep. He won't know what's going on, and you lift the blanket up so his feet will get cold. And you lay down there beside him, that is, next to him, near him. Uncover his feet, and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. Now this was a custom in Israel. There was nothing improper or impure about it. There were all kinds of people around there, and it was a public place. There wasn't anything immoral about this at all. It was a Jewish custom of proposing marriage. And she is proposing marriage to Boaz by this act of uncovering his feet and laying down at his feet. And she said unto her, All that thou sayest unto me I will do. Now she goes to the feet. And she went down, verse 6, unto the floor, and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, now it doesn't say he was drunk. It just said when he drunk, that is,